everyone, welcome. This is Angst, and today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Um, so I watched the movie last night, and I wanted to do this video last night, but then I was like, I don't know, man. I'm just gonna let it marinate and percolate a little bit, collect my thoughts, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the movie. And again, before we proceed with anything else, I just want to let you know that these are just my thoughts. I'm not saying that it's a good movie, bad movie, or whatever. All I'm gonna say is that it's a movie. All right, that's where I'm sitting at right now. It's just a movie that I watched, and that's it, man. It's just sort of in this like median line for me, maybe slightly even below it. And the biggest thing that I felt was this like weird sort of empathy for Ryan Coogler, who I know was in a very tough situation, and I could sort of see it come out of screen, like his dilemma of what does he want to do with the script and the story. Where does he take it now? Because think about this. This guy had just acquired this new franchise. The first movie did so well, both critically and commercially. And then his anchor that was sort of holding the ship down because of the tragic circumstances just got unfettered, and now he was just floating in this vast sea by himself. And he had to obviously collect everything and figure out what to do with this film, and you could sort of feel that from just watching this movie. I could feel his dilemma. I could feel his issues with the script and where to take the story. And his dilemma of like, does he want to focus on the grief that these characters and these real actors are dealing with, or he wants to make this action spectacular like the first movie. And in a perfect world, these two things will have a great marriage. They'll marry together, right, to make this one cohesive thing. But I hate to say it, it's sort of, for me anyways, it sort of fell flat on both ends. Okay, I'm gonna start with the very first thing, which is the length of the film. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and it is long. I felt it. I felt those 2 hours and 40 minutes, man. And there wasn't enough going on to keep me invested for all that time. There just really wasn't. So that was the number one thing right off the bat. When the movie ended, I was like, wow, I was here for a long time. But with that being said, his direction was still on point. He did a really good job still directing the film. It's because it's a modern superhero film. There's a lot of CGI. There's a lot of CGI in this film, man. And that's sort of where the first movie excelled, because it introduced us to this new place, Wakanda, that we had never seen before, and they did such a great job with the beautiful landscape and all the color and the culture and the costumes that they introduced in the movie, and the people and the sound and the music. It was all brilliant. Now, this movie doesn't introduce us to any of that because we've already seen any of that, and what it doesn't do is it doesn't build on that, right? To the point where there were certain shots in the film where the background, which is the city of Wakanda, was sort of hazy. Like, I could barely even see it. The focus was on the characters, as it should be, but man, the world behind it was sort of just lost in translation, And the CGI at points was not the greatest. My biggest gripe was when two characters, Shuri and Ramona, were talking on this beach, and they showed these elephants charge into the water, right? And they startled them a little bit. Man, those elephants looked so fake that it completely took me out of that moment. Now, I understand, like, I haven't seen Wakanda. I don't know what Wakanda looks like, right? So if you show me whatever, I'll believe it. I don't know what an underwater city looks like, so I can buy your idea of it, okay, your interpretation of it. But I know what an elephant looks like. I know what that fucking thing feels like. I've touched an elephant before, and those were not elephants, and it was so apparent. And it's just one of those problems with these modern superhero films. It's like, well, if you've ever done a movie, there's a saying that goes where people will sarcastically say stuff like, we'll fix it in post. And I feel like that's sort of like the attitude with a lot of these films, and a lot of these filmmakers, they have the attitude of like, fuck it, we'll just fix it in post, we'll just do some CGI over it and it'll be fine. And guess what? It's not. It's not. It just takes you out of those moments. So that was one of my gripes with his decision making as a director. Now the next thing is the story. I gotta say, man, if you there's two stories going on, right? There's this whole superhero arc that the characters are going on, and the supervillain and blah blah blah, the regular superhero stuff, and then there's grief in this movie, right? So there's characters that are truly dealing with grief, the loss of T'Challa. And I will say this, and please don't take this the wrong way, but if you remove the real life tragedy and the loss of Chadwick Boseman that's attached to this film, and if you just watch the movie like I did, and you just are watching it for the face value, which means that the character of T'Challa is gone from this universe now in the very beginning of this movie, and you see these people deal with the grief, the family of T'Challa deal with his grief, it doesn't have as much impact if you remove the actual tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman from it, right? If you separate those two things, the loss of T'Challa isn't really that big in this movie. You know what I'm saying? It's only because you are aware of the real life story of what happened. That's where the impact comes in. But other than that, man, the grief part of it was sort of like, it was there, but then it wasn't fully there for me. You know what I mean? And the other thing is the motivation of the villain, Namor. Man, I gotta tell you, that was disappointing, to say the least, because his motivation to come out of the water made no sense, made absolute zero sense to me. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but really, there was no need for him to even come out of the water and make himself be known to anyone, really, right? Because, if you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. There was no need for him to do that, especially no need for him to go after the Wakandans. I mean, it just made no sense to me. The only thing I appreciated about Namor and his culture was the lore behind it, right? How they came to be, how they became what they became, and it's sort of inspired by what now we're discovering may be real. Like there were these ancient colonies down in Southern America that just left, right, because of whatever disease, or they were getting sick because of the colonizing and all that stuff, right? So they just abandoned huge cities, and you can see patterns of like places where you may have found cities back in the days and now have been taken over by the forest in the Amazon. So I like that lore part of it. And then there was his conversation with Shuri when he's trying to explain his purpose of why he's doing what he's doing. And man, that just didn't make any sense to me, again, because not that it didn't make any sense to me, but it was almost like, okay, so we're just copy and pasting Killmonger's motivation from the last movie, his purpose from the last one, and just pasting it on this guy, with him being in the forefront now. And the problem here is he is not as interesting as Killmonger. His motivation, his purpose is not as strong as Killmonger's. I didn't care about him as much. I can't relate to an underwater merman as I can to Killmonger, who was just such a fleshed out character, man. Portrayed so well by Michael B. Jordan. I still believe that's one of his greatest performances on screen. And they just took his arc and transferred it over here, and it just, I don't know, there was just something missing. Speaking of Namor, I don't know the name of the actor who plays him. Apparently he's really good in the show Narcos. That's what I've heard. I've never seen Narcos, so I don't really know much about this actor. I just gotta say that it was lackluster at best. Only one moment when he is talking to one specific character, Ramona, he comes to land and he sort of threatens her. I saw the rage in his eyes for that one scene and one scene only. Besides that, I didn't buy him as a king. There was no gravitas to his performance. There was no regality there. There was no sense of being a royalty there. Also, his costume, my goodness, those green skivvies, oof, they were rough, dude. The Hermes wings in his ankles didn't do him any favors either. He was just rough looking, man. And honestly, like I said, the performance that he put on did not justify, in my opinion, my humble opinion, it did not justify having that guy play that character. I feel like maybe they should have went with someone who was more of a physical presence, because Namor really didn't have much to do in this film. Really, he didn't have uh, many chances to show his acting prowess, right? Like, it wasn't built. The script wasn't built for that. The script was built for Shuri, actually, Letitia Wright, who does a serviceable job. Okay, like, she's not great, but she's just there. To me, Danai Guerra's Okoye sort of stole the show from me. She is the most consistent performer throughout all these movies, right? Right after Chadwick and Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger, she is the one that I'm like, okay, she is that character, and I buy her 100%. Angela Bassett was great in certain moments, and I feel like, to me, she just crossed that line in certain moments where she was trying to do a little too much at certain points, but other than that, the performances were okay. Letitia Wright was good, but again, nothing too remarkable to me. Again, this movie, Danai Guerra's, her performance was the one that stood out to me the most. And speaking of performances, that was the one thing that was missing from this movie, man. There wasn't a performance that was like a pillar, right, for this film. Like in the last film, Ryan Coogler had this vision, and he was surrounded by these people that were going to make this vision come true. And we saw Wakanda for the first time, and we fell in love with Wakanda and the people there and different tribes and all that stuff. He had a similar role to do with, I can't remember what the underwater city is called in this movie even. But man, we didn't get to see a lot of it. We didn't really get to know anybody there that well, and it wasn't as fleshed out as one would have hoped. Also, the pillars of performers, right? Like, there were two main performances in the first Black Panther that stood out. To me, the best performance in that film was Chadwick Boseman. I've been saying that since 2018. His gravity to that role of T'Challa. I mean, even when you see him in this film, just in like little flashbacks, that smile, the way he walks, the way he sort of commands your respect, his presence is what made him the freaking Black Panther that you wanted to cheer for. He had this nobility about him, but he was still a badass, and we loved it. And on the other side, you had just a complete badass in Michael B. Jordan, this brick house of a man who was just willing and ready to do everything and anything to get what he wanted, and he got it. He almost had all of it, and you relate to both of these guys. And this movie was sort of missing those pillars for me. There wasn't one person who sort of, I don't know, took on that responsibility of shouldering this movie, because every movie sort of needs that. It needs that lead. And this movie sort of felt a little lacking of that lead for me personally. Other than that, there are some action set pieces that are good. Okay, they are good. They're not great. The last battle, the CGI was very shaky for me. And then, again, going back to like repeating almost the same formula, there's this like whole car chase scene that takes place at nighttime in a city, very reminiscent again of the first movie, although I think the first movie still did it better. The only good part about that whole scene for me was, man, there was this fight on the bridge with Okoye and one of the sea creatures, and that was simply badass. I love that scene. That scene was great. And again, those sort of moments is why Okoye was my favorite character coming out of this film. And then you had Riri. Not much to say there. She was Ironheart. I could not get past that suit that they gave her in the end, man. It just looked like a Japanese dancing robot. You know what I mean? It just looked like a toy, and it just sort of, I don't know, just undermined everything that was cool about the actual Iron Man suits. I don't know, man. It was just a little too childish for me. It just, I don't know. It was just something very anime about it. Also, there were a couple other suits that were introduced for a couple of other characters, and they were abysmal. And in the movie, there's a joke about it, and I agree, man. They did not look great. Um, when the Black Panther finally showed up, Black Panther was there. You know what I mean? Like, I just still feel like I missed, I missed Chadwick Boseman's presence in this movie as both T'Challa and the Black Panther. He had this weird way of commanding your sort of attention when he was on screen, and I feel like the character who got to play Black Panther this time around literally didn't get to do that. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't have enough gravitas again to be able to hold my attention and command my respect and command whatever. Just sell me on you being this hero now that's gonna rise to the occasion. I just didn't buy it, personally. The greatest thing in this movie was this little cameo, and that's where I'm gonna leave that. It's a character, cameo, comes back, gives this sort of speech to this other character, and that made perfect sense to me. Wonderfully done. I wish there was more things like that in that film, because it was maybe like a 2-minute scene, but that 2-minute scene did more to build that character in the right direction than this whole movie was trying to do, right? And yeah, and so that was it. That's sort of my thought on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. It's a movie that I watched, and that's it. I'm most likely never gonna watch this movie again. And that's okay. Not every movie deserves to be watched over and over again. You don't have to be a repeat viewer of all these films. I watched it once. I thought it was an okay movie, and that's about it. I will say it again. I do miss Chadwick Boseman, and he was a wonderful actor, wonderful performance, and he is, for me anyways, he was thoroughly missed in this movie. So yeah, that was my thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. How about you guys? Did you guys watch the movie yet? What do you guys think about it? What do you think works in this movie? What do you think does not? Where do you think this franchise is headed? Whatever your thoughts are, go ahead and list them down below, and let's keep talking movies, guys. Until I see you guys next time, you be well. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.